Hi, everyone. Welcome to the NOOK Google Plus Hangout with best-selling author Christopher Moore. I'm Jeremy Cesarek from the NOOK social media team, and I'll be moderating today's Hangout. We're excited to have Christopher here, along with some of his biggest fans who we recently chose through a sweepstakes. And we're also excited to be broadcasting this Hangout via Google Plus Hangouts on air so that a bunch of people can watch and the lucky few can participate. First, I'd like to welcome New York Times bestselling author Christopher Moore. He is the author of such modern classics as A Dirty Job and The Stupidest Angel, and his newest book, Sacre Bleu, recently debuted at #3 on the New York Times bestseller list. Hi, Christopher.
They'll put that in later. Hello.
And I'd also just like to give a quick shout out to all of the lucky fans who will be participating in today's chat. We have Becky, Tina, Dorinda, Blanca, Megan, and Katie. We may have, let's see, Lisa. There's Lisa. She just joined us. Fantastic.
Hey, Lisa.
Hi, Lisa. Welcome.
And let's just
kick you before you got here.
So, Katie, do you have a question you'd like to ask Christopher to get this kicked off?
Oh, man. Okay. Whew. Stage fright. Actually, yeah, I want to know how you conceive of your characters first. I mean, do you hear them? Do you see them? Do you imagine them in a particular place? All of the above. Can you tell me more about that?
Depends on the character. A lot of times it just is on what I need them to do. You know, like A Dirty Job is a good example. The whole concept of that book started with me saying, what if a guy who was a hypochondriac got the job of being deaf? And so I built Charlie Asher from that. Whereas in a book like Fluke, I actually based the two main characters on marine mammal biologists and a National Geographic photographer who I was doing research on, and they were just such great people. I thought, well, I'm going to make them into characters and hope it doesn't make them too angry. So it just depends on what I need them to do. And then, as you guys know, some of my books are based in either Shakespeare or the Bible or whatever, so the characters come from the source material. This book, Sacre Bleu, a lot of them come from history. Even Lucien, although there wasn't a Lucien Lessard, there was a baker on Montmartre that helped keep the Impressionists alive by feeding them, during their starving years. So I really start, on first what I need them to do, and then, they sort of develop their personalities on, like, do I need them to be funny, or do I want to have them speak in a certain way, which certainly with the Shakespearean characters was the case, and with Abby Normal in my vampire books, it was all about how she talked, because it was so annoying. And so she had to be a certain kind of character for that to work.
Did you do a lot of research on how she talked? Did you have to go hang out with the rough kids around Seattle?
That was the golden age of, look, Chat Noir.
Yeah.
In the book. That was actually during the golden ages of the blog, when MySpace was sort of the main form, and there was a lot of people blogging. So there were a lot of goth kids that were blogging at the time. And so I would read goth blogs by kids her age, and for about 40 minutes every day before I would write an Abby Normal scene. So I got the vernacular without being the creepy old dude in the corner of the cafe listening to what everybody was saying. Not that, I mean, I was still the creepy old dude, I just wasn't in the cafe, yeah. Any other questions?
Blanca, do you have any questions?
Yeah, I kind of wanted to find out a little bit more about Tucker Case, because he seems to be really paralleled on the whole Hamlet thing, but at the same time, he's a very lovable Hamlet, whereas Hamlet is just very annoying. And I didn't know, like, what was the connection there? Was it just because it was a fun story and you wanted to make him doofusy, or was it like there was something deeper in there? Because I really like him and I wanted to find out more about him.
Well, Tuck started less with the Hamlet thing and more with he was a guy who women really found attractive, but he didn't understand that. It was the phrase, he was a geek in a cool guy's body. And so he always found himself sort of being destroyed by his attractiveness to women. So that was where it really started. And the Hamlet thing was just a riff I was on one day. It was like, I thought, well, why not have his entire backstory? in 3 paragraphs be the entire plot to Hamlet. You know, and his girlfriend drowns in a hot tub, and you know his mother runs off with his uncle and stuff like that. So his Hamlet parallel was more just sort of one day when I thought, I'm bored and I need to rip Shakespeare off. But the character Tuck came more from trying to do a womanizer who is sort of mystified by the fact that he's a womanizer, and you know keeps waking up with these different women, thinking I'm not really sure why I'm here. He's a little bit based on a friend of mine who's like that, but I can't say who that is because you might see this.
Okay.
So, Tina, do you or your friend there have a question for Christopher?
Well, he asked his question last time, so I'll ask mine now. I read in a couple of your books that you refer to the country Guatemala. I wonder if you ever been there, because I am from Guatemala, so anytime somebody mentions the country, my ears go, and so why Guatemala? Did it sound like exotic to you, or?
I think I learned to spell it at one point, and so it came down to like I need to have someplace. Wasn't really sure where it was, but I thought, well, I'm going to send somebody. I don't even remember the context I used Guatemala in, but
there's a couple of lines where they are, and I'm just
yeah, I probably needed a country that started with a G, and I thought that might get your attention. I'm like, well, thank goodness we've got that, the Guatemalan people.
My mother is in Guatemala, and she said that whenever you want to go see it, you are more than welcome to come stay with us.
Thank you. Thank you. That's exciting. And it's tropical there, right?
It's beautiful. There's all kinds of different climates there. So.
Yeah, that's why I use it, is because it's beautiful and tropical.
And the women are beautiful.
Starts with a G.
So, Megan, do you have a question you'd like to ask?
I don't know. I have to mouse Megan.
Oh, it's Megan, and I can't hear a word Jeremy is saying, so I apologize.
You're blocked, Jeremy.
He's not. I swear. He's the only one that's mute out of everybody, and I've hovered over him. But anyways,
your turn.
My question is entirely asinine, but how on earth would they turn Sacre Bleu into spray paint? At the very end of your book, you mentioned that they're going to...
Dude!
I'm sure everybody's read it, in fact.
I haven't finished it yet. Sorry.
So...
Well, now that I've spoiled it for everyone.
No, I la-la-la'd you out. I didn't hear it.
Yeah, that's all right. We already knew that after you blocked Jeremy that you were mean. I love it when I get a question like this, and it's like, so you don't have a problem with the time travel and the magical 40,000-year-old woman, but the spray paint thing stops you in your tracks. Trust me, the spray paint thing is possible, and it's the least difficult thing that you could do. Seriously.
Uh-huh.
You know, they get spray paint into those cans. You know, it's not born in there.
Well, of course not, but it uses heavy machinery.
Presumably. You know what I would say? If that ruined the book for you?
It didn't.
Yeah. Then, yeah, it's possible. Just take my word for it. I mean, really, you did buy the other stuff that's complete balderdash, so this part really shouldn't throw you.
Wait, it's balderdash? Really? There was no Biff?
I just feel like,
Oh
wow,
my God.
we're the social disappointment experiment. One at a time, we're going to ruin every one of your experiences. Nice. So, Jeremy, why don't you ask someone else if they have a question?
Great idea. Thank you, Chris. Becky, you are up.
Yeah, I wondered, who is your favorite character to write about?
Strangely enough, there's two things. There's somebody who I really like writing about because they're fun and it's just easy, and then there's ones that are really fun to have written about. Like I really like having written Pocket the Fool's dialogue, but it's real crafted and hard to write. As far as just actually writing stuff, and that's the same with Abby Normal too. When you're writing in a specific dialect, it's much more difficult. Whenever in this book, whenever I would be writing the Toulouse-Lautrec character, I was really having fun. He was really, you couldn't really say anything that was too outrageous for him to say, so I had to keep thinking up more outrageous things for him to say, which was actually really entertaining. So that in this book, certainly that's my favorite.
Cool. And Dorinda, you are up.
Well, I actually listened to your books on audiobook, and Fisher Stevens was such an amazing narrator. That made it so much fun. And I was wondering if you get any type of say in who gets to narrate your books or anything along those lines.
Yeah, actually, I had that question on Twitter yesterday. We grow the audiobook narrators on a farm that I keep, and when we harvest them when the voice is just right, and then after they record the book, they're turned into glue. In the interest of ecology, then we glue the pages of the book in with.
That's wonderful.
No, they ask me. They say kind of what would you want, and then they go in whatever different direction than I gave them. Like for instance, for Fool, I said I want a Brit to read it, and for the vampire books, I said I want a woman to read it. I didn't, and then sometimes they'll come back with a choice of actors, but it's usually New York actors, and if a play comes up, they're going to go do a real job rather than something that they just have a couple of days work on, which is reading an audiobook. But in fact, I think. Margaret, is it Margaret Plimpton, the one that's on, what's her first name? Martha. Martha Plimpton was up for reading the vampire books, and all of a sudden a new Tom Stoppard play came to town, and it was like, well, you don't have Martha Plimpton anymore. But I've been really pleased with a lot of the choices that have come up, even though they've been a pleasant surprise. Ewan Morton, who reads Sacre Bleu and Fool, is brilliant. Fisher Stevens, who reads Dirty Job and Lamb, is brilliant. So I luck out, and I get a little bit of a say, but not actually down to, go get the guy that played Doctor Who to do it or something like that.
Gotcha.
Which I would have asked for Fool.
Which one would you have asked for?
Tennant, David Tennant.
Absolutely.
But Ewan Morton did a highly better than expected job. I really was pleased with him.
Excellent.
Tina, I see you gesturing.
I just want to remind about the bookmark. You had a bookmark idea during the meeting here in D.C., and you wanted to remind yourself about creating a bat bookmark so it can show up on everybody's storyline from now on.
Yeah, I have people making notes. My note-making people have made that note. But thank you for reminding us, and thank you for the machine behind you. Very obscure reference that Becky hasn't asked a question.
I just asked a question.
Huh?
I'm curious if you're going to write about the people in Pine Cove again, if you're planning to.
I don't have a plan to, but I didn't have a plan to write the second and third book either. I just had a deadline. And I thought, well, I know these people, so I'll write about them again. So it could happen. I just don't have a plan right now to go back to Pine Cove. I lived in Pine Cove when I wrote those books, and I live in San Francisco now. So
yeah, my brother.
Yeah, if I'm up against deadline and need a book fast, it'll be set in San Francisco.
My brother told me I was supposed to beg you to write a book about Molly.
We'll see. We'll see. Maybe if they make a really successful movie, I can be bribed into doing it.
That would be awesome.
Okay.
So I actually have a question myself. So for Sacre Bleu, did you get a chance to travel to Paris at all to do research, or?
Yeah, I lived in Paris for 2 months. So I suffer from my art.
Roughly.
And then I would take like day trips out to Anvers or Honfleur or Rhône or Chartres or the different towns that the Impressionists painted in. So I've sort of walked that ground. I didn't spend any time in southern France, but yeah, I spent a couple of months in Paris and surrounding areas researching the book. And sort of the great thing about that is Paris doesn't really look that different than it did in the 1870s, except there's cars instead of horses, because most of the city was built between 1850 and 1870.
Very cool. I remember hearing that a lot. The reason so many mysteries are written on cruise ships is because then the writers can write it off on their taxes.
I mean, certainly I look at it more like, here's something that's really cool I can do, but justify it as work.
Exactly.
And Island of the Sequin Love Nun was completely written so I could go dive the wrecks in Truk Lagoon in Micronesia, because if I was going to be correct about cargo cults, I should have said it in Melanesia, not Micronesia, but they didn't have a big harbor full of wrecked ships to scuba dive on in Melanesia, so they didn't get credit. But yeah, so I make decisions more based on what I want to do. The whale book was all about getting in the water with humpbacks. And it's like, that would be a cool thing to do. Maybe I'll write a book about it, and they'll let me. And so that, but I don't think it's much about it being tax deductible. I have seen authors, books where they're like, why is he writing about every entree in this meal? And I think you're right. I think there are some that may write more for the tax deductible part of it, but I just do it because it allows me to get out of a room by myself and go do something, which is kind of what your life is as a writer if you don't research,
Yeah. And so Katie, you're up. Do you have another question?
Yeah. Well, okay. So on that note, if you do things for tax write-offs, what on earth would possess you to spend months and months in a room with Pocket?
Well, I don't. That was the answer to the question. Is I do things that I want to do that I find interesting, and I came to Pocket because I wanted to do a book about a fool, and at that time I felt like I was only hearing truth about politics from comedians, from Jon Stewart and Stephen Colbert and Bill Maher and those types, and everybody else was just either playing it from the left or the right and not really saying anything. And so, that's really the role of the fool, is to speak truth to power. And so I decided I wanted to write a book about a fool. And I had breakfast with my editor here in New York, and I said, I want to write a book about a fool, but I don't know whether to just do a generic fool or to do Lear's fool, who's arguably the most famous fool in literature. And she said, oh, you have to do Lear's fool. And that was her end of commitment to that. And then I had to go learn the canon of Shakespeare. And so I've always admired the language of Shakespeare, the virtuosity of it, and so it's not always a profit motive. Sometimes it's what will keep you interested, and certainly, Fool was more than anything an exercise in craft, in working the language and making it sound Elizabethan, but much more accessible to our modern ear. So. And I got to go to England and write it off, so, there was that.
I was going to ask, did you get to travel with that one? And then as a follow-up, I'd like to thank you personally for making it possible for me to curse in school and not get in trouble for it. I won't repeat the word here, but I can use all of those words and not get in trouble, and that makes me feel really
well, that's
good.
good. You can do that in school. Of course, there's no profanity allowed on the internet, so we can't have. Thank you for not repeating that.
Oh,
but,
no problem.
Yeah, I took a historical tour of Britain, so I went to a lot of medieval cities, and York and Chester and Bath and Edinburgh, and sort of walked the areas, those different areas that are still standing from the time that. That I was going to set the book. The real time of King Lear is 400 BC, so there were no castles or dukes or earls. There was just mud huts. So Shakespeare's his own setting is mythical, but I sort of pointed it toward late 13th century, and I'm writing another book with Pocket in it now. So
I read that. I'm really excited.
This time I'm going to Venice, so I had to suffer going to Venice. And
gosh. Well, thank you for going through all that for us. We really appreciate it.
Very well. It was damp. So. I mildewed a little bit.
It happens.
Thanks.
Blanca, do you have
The
another
machine
question?
has a question.
I'm sorry?
The machine. The guy behind Tina.
I'm sorry, I'm not officially supposed to be here. Just a quick.
Oh, okay.
When you wrote Lamb, did you?
When you find out what I'm talking about, you're going to be really, really probably
Please.
embarrassed.
When you wrote Lamb, did you have any moral outrage backlash?
Not at all. Not at all. I think a lot of us, including myself, thought it. If you've read the afterword of the original edition of Lamb, it's about 10 pages of going, kidding. But when the book came out, it was exactly the opposite. I probably had 30,000 emails about Lamb since then. 4 were negative, and that was 2 from people in Alabama who hadn't read the book, but the idea really, worked them off, and 1 from a school teacher who was like 75 in Nebraska, and she just didn't like that blue language, which was a completely fair criticism. And then 1 was from a retired Monsignor in Montreal, who didn't like it because it didn't adhere to Catholic doctrine. So other than that, people of faith who have found their way to it really like it, and it's being taught in seminary. Under a lot of denominations. So far so good. But yeah, I expected, to be like in a bunker with Salman Rushdie, and it didn't happen that way at all. So pleasant surprise, people aren't the douchebags we thought they were. So they'll change that, in post.
So Blanca, you are up. Do you have another question?
Yeah, I do have a question, but I just want to kind of sing your praises for 1 quick second based on the comments that were just ahead.
That's fine. Take your time.
Which is, first of all, I completely have to second the awesome cuss words that you have in all your books because they're very inventive, and people look at me very strange when I just blurt them out in random places. But so that's awesome, and also the whole Lamb thing. I'm the daughter of a seminarian who painted that Frankie behind me there, and he would have adored your book, and there were a lot of theories there that are lesser known, and so I don't know who thinks it's completely against Catholic doctrine other than, well, it's a comedy book, so duh.
Yeah.
But I thought it was very well written, so you are awesome, and being also the daughter of an artist, I'm loving Sacre Bleu, though I haven't finished it yet. So now that I've praised about how awesome
thank
you
you.
are,
That's great. Yeah, and they're teaching it in colleges that they would never have let me in, so I'm very flattered by that. And it was just that one guy. He was a retired Monsignor. I don't even know what they do. It's just like, I can't catch the boys anymore. I have to stop work. Not a big deal. But thank you for your thoughts on it. I'm just starting to hear from painters about this book, so I'm hoping that I get positive reactions on it.
And actually, that kind of is my question. I haven't finished Sacre Bleu yet, but I'm kind of in the point where we're realizing, I don't know how much I should say, yeah, plug your ears if you haven't gotten anywhere, that it's the same person. And it was kind of a little interesting for me, absolutely being a person who hates the Impressionists because they were also very sexist, and being a feminist, that they always saw their muses as nothing more than objects. But so I'm kind of a little interested in what was behind your thinking in making that character one person, and the commentary that I'm kind of gathering from you of how the Impressionists saw their inspirations, their models.
Part of it was a quote from Renoir in his biography, which was kind of dictated to his son, Jean Renoir, the film director, where he said, they're all the same woman. And which, everything is in context. The Impressionists, were they chauvinists? Well, not in context. Not in the context of their world. In context to our world, they were. I mean, I had a problem, and I totally get that, because I had a problem with Degas because he was an anti-Semite. And I had loved his work, and then I found that out. And I thought, not so much. in Renoir's biography, he says they are all the same woman, and you just must find your ideal and marry her, and then you have all women in your life. And I think that just resonated in a more mystical way for me. And I think that, you know, if anything, you can look at Sacre Bleu as your revenge, because blue is definitely not just an object to be used, you know. And you'll get to that part further on. But don't worry about giving that away, because evidently it's a requirement to write a review of this book to reveal the entire plot in the first 2 paragraphs. So, you know, it's like my publisher keeps sending me these reviews. I'm like, oh, well, thank you. I'm glad I kept that from the reader until 3/4 of the book, and now they don't need to read that part.
So we have time for about 2 more questions. I want to give Megan another chance. So can you hear me now, Megan, or can someone else ask her if she has a question, please?
Hold on, I'll get it.
Yes.
Hold on, almost there.
It's your turn, Megan. It's your turn.
Oh, it's my turn?
Yeah. No more spray paint questions, though.
No more spray paint questions. Really, for being a funny writer, you put so much research into your books. Besides the tax write-off thing and stuff like that we all know that you don't do that for. But really, what made you want to actually like research before you started writing? Because a lot of people who write just say, okay, I like this idea, I've never visited Detroit before, but I'm totally going to put it in 8 Mile. So
I think I ask a lot of you guys as far as what I'm going to ask you to believe. So I like to put it in the context of a lot of stuff that is true and is believable. And what was interesting about this book so much is that many of the anecdotes in it are true that you'd think I made up. You know, Renoir, you know, being so taken by the color blue his dying wife is turning, he has to grab, you know, canvas and palette. Spoiler. That's that painting exists. There's a color picture of it in the book, and that really happened. So, and the same thing with the painting the trains, and when you base the story on fact, then you can I can sort of ask you to believe, you know, things like the Color Man and things like Juliet's story and some of the things that are a little less credible, and frankly, I just like learning about it. I like to sort of come from a point of where I have a lot to create from instead of I'm just making stuff up and then checking to see whether it's wrong or not. It sort of makes me bulletproof with critics.
And Dorinda, could you ask the last question, please?
Sure. Well, first, I would also like to say that we've not met, but I am Charlie's sister in in A Dirty Job. That's me, including the love of suits and David Bowie. So thank you for throwing a little bit of me in there.
You're very welcome. You're very welcome. I'm glad you liked the character.
I did. She was actually probably my favorite out of all of them, believe it or not.
Thanks. I'm glad.
And my question is, how do you keep yourself motivated to keep going with the story? I write, and it's hard because I'm really good at short stories, but taking it a step further, I find that I get bored with my own stuff. So how do you keep yourself from doing that?
Well, first, you know, I used to write short stories too, and I just realized, you know, 25 years ago I could never make a living doing that. So I had to learn to write a novel, and once you've made that decision that, you know, you have to write a novel, you have to develop discipline to it. It's something that I've set out as a goal, is to finish a novel, and you break it into parts. I mean, that's why chapters are not for readers, they're for writers. Scenes are not for readers, although they work for readers, they're for writers. So you build a novel. I even take my novels and put them into parts, the way, you know, plays are put into acts. And so you don't write a full 400-page novel. You write parts that achieve a thing. Each scene achieves something. Each chapter achieves something. The scenes tend to be dramatic, and the chapters tend to be structural. And you'll know what I mean by that. But it's just a different way of thinking. I think it's as hard to write a short story as it is a novel. It just takes longer to write a novel. So you already know how to do it. You just have to, have something to say. So.
Makes sense. Thank you.
Okay, Jeremy, tell us what to do. We need adult
Well,
supervision.
before we sign out, I just want to let everyone know that tonight Christopher's signing in New York City at Union Square, Barnes & Noble at 7 o'clock. So if anyone watching or if any of you guys are in New York, make sure to stop by. And I want to thank all of you for participating and everyone who was watching. And most of all, thank you to Christopher for taking time out of your busy schedule to chat with your fans and everyone here at Barnes & Noble.
It's a great pleasure, you guys. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
No, thank you. Hey, Bianca, you know that painting, the eyes in that painting behind you are following us.
Oh, are they?
Yeah.
Good.
When your dad painted that, he's like, yeah, I'm going to make a creepy St. Francis.
Oh, yeah, totally.
Well done. Yeah.